Welcome to another edition of Grace Under Pressure, where my guest today is Joe Davis. I will tell you all about Joe in just a moment. Grace Under Pressure is that show which deals with what's too often dismissed as the soft stuff, the caring, the commitment when you exert it for others. And when you do it as a leader, as you will definitely discover that Joe Davis is, you do it with a purpose of bringing people together with common cause. And as Joe will tell you, you do it with a spirit of generosity. Joe Davis, welcome to Grace Under Pressure.
Thank you very much, John. Thanks for the very kind words also.
Great. Well, I want to tell folks all about you. Joe Davis is a managing director and senior partner at the Boston Consulting Group, BCG. Prior to that, you were headed BCG North America during COVID. So what a job that was, and we'll explore that. So you are a champion of people. I love that. You are a member of the CEO Action for Diversity and Inclusion. You're a graduate of Whitman College and the chair of the Board of Trustees. You earned your MBA from a little school called Harvard Business School, which is pretty cool. And I am going to tell you, Joe, put you on the spot. You and your wife, Sarah, are very, very wealthy because you have 7 grandchildren.
Number 8 was just born.
Oh, congratulations. Wonderful. All right. Good. Welcome, Joe Davis. You're going to talk to us today about a brand new book called The Generous Leader. So, and I told you beforehand, BCG is one of the most notable and successful strategy firms. But to my mind, and shame on me, I don't always link the concept of generosity with them. So tell me how that came about, Joe.
That's yeah. I guess that's not where BCG spends its work time. But I actually during COVID, you mentioned that it was quite an intense time for every leader, and I talked to a number of leaders for this book, and we all felt the same thing. And I had at the end of that, so many of my colleagues and friends said you should really write about that leadership and interview some others, and just talk more about how more of us need to and are starting to bring our hearts with the heads and hands into the center of leadership. Okay. That's what inspired me.
Good. So you grew up, I'm going to guess, a Harvard Business School grad, rising through the ranks in different organizations and at BCG. So you draw a distinction. What makes a generous leader?
So I think a generous leader is someone who, I actually have my definition now, who gives of themselves freely without expectation of personal benefit so that others can develop, grow, and thrive at their full potential. Now, I do want to say one thing, John, that's very important, because some people have said, oh, is this all about, rainbows and unicorns and fluffy clouds? And no, you still have to drive positive outcomes as a leader. And I thought I'd share one quote that I thought was very powerful from Joaquin Duato, the CEO of Johnson & Johnson, when I asked him. And I will read, he said, what you did, how hard you worked, how well you tried, that's all good, but it doesn't matter. No, of course it matters a little, but as a leader, outcomes matter. But then he said, but this next part takes maturity. The sooner you understand and step past yourself and understand you have to listen to others and connect more fully with your teams, the sooner you'll release and be able to leverage, and I like this last part, all the human traits critical to get positive results. So that was very powerful. Of course you got to get results, but it's by releasing human traits to get there. I thought it was a pretty interesting description of a generous leader.
Without question, and I'm glad you drew the distinction, or even the parallel, because you said the pushback. Generous leader. That's like people like me who've never led an organization. That's how I write. My topic is grace. You're a real business person, and you help businesses succeed. So. But it has to be that balance between the two. Now, you write that key to that is empathy. Now, it became kind of a buzzword, sadly, I think, during COVID. So how are you defining empathy, Joe?
Yeah, I defined it as the ability to understand, be aware of, be sensitive to others' feelings and perspective and experiences. And quite frankly, what the word perspective taking, which I think that's really what it's about. And I'll just say for a second, Kristen Peck, CEO of Zoeta, she was speaking with Alan Murray. I read the interview, and she pointed out that over half our employees now are millennials, and if you add the Gen Zs, it's well over half. And they expect empathetic leaders who connect in different ways. So to me, it's really, you're really, are you okay? Am I getting feedback? Are you okay?
Yeah, no, we're fine. Thank you.
You're really listening to others to learn. You're probing. Every executive I talked to said I like to ask, and ask. And when you do that, as you and I both know, people feel more engaged. You're showing you care. They open up. They're inspired. They give you ideas and insights that you wouldn't have otherwise. And so you're really in the spirit of helping them thrive at their full potential. They feel like they're partners in the efforts. And of course, everybody benefits.
I'm glad you talked about asking as a form of integrating that into your listening. And it's something that I do in my coaching, and all of my colleagues do this. So and you're a senior leader, and you ask for input and all that. So if I'm reporting to you, Joe, and you say, well, what is my opinions and perspective on that? And there's a disagreement. So how do you handle that? You're the boss, but you ask for my input. So where's the balance, Joe?
Well, that's interesting. First off, if you really come from this perspective where you are going to take others' perspectives and ask and learn, I actually use the phrase, engage the skeptics, uncover the no's. Because, knowledgists rarely are dead against you. Maybe sometimes, but most times they know something that you don't know. So I think the line is, you should go out of your way to engage with and ask people who you don't normally speak with, not just your circle. And when they're bringing something to you, spend the time to understand, just brain time. Where are they coming from? What do they know that I don't know? What is going on in their department or went on in their life? And, if you really put those two together, you're going to get to better answers. Now, you can disagree on stuff and you may decide, okay, I've got all the inputs. I'm making this call. That's your right and your job as a leader. Although we're not talking about it, but it's also your right and job if you're wrong to change. That's a different point. But so I wouldn't draw a line. I just would collect every bit of information I can, then you make the best decision you can. And you can
I think that's an important distinction, because sometimes maybe folks in a new leadership position or want to ask, but they'll say, well, if I ask them and they give me ideas and I don't accept it, I've torched any relationship. And as you explained, they haven't done so. Would you agree?
Yeah, actually, I'll cite this. There was a study done by Google. They interviewed 80,000 managers, which says something about how big they are, their own managers. And the best performers, they said the best thing, they were not first and foremost a great coach, which came from engaging and empowering. And that came from asking and listening. They asked and they asked. So actually, I do think, when you're a newer leader, the whole idea of generosity might be strange because you're trying to prove yourself. You said one reason. It could also be, well, I have to have the answer because I'm supposed to be the new boss. Actually, your people feel just the opposite. Ask me. And, and I think in that case, as this Google study, you'll become the higher performer. You got to do a lot of other stuff well. I'm not saying.
I'm glad you mentioned it, because I think people need to hear that, especially emerging managers and people just getting their feet wet, moving up a ladder. So now you have a whole chapter in your book about small acts and big impacts. So I love that concept. And how does it manifest in your leadership style, Joe?
So I think this one, all of these go back to the idea of respect for one another, seeing people as humans, and them seeing you as a human. And you talk to anybody, simple small act of thank you, that's rather easy. A congratulations for a job well done. A congratulations email when you share it with others in the team. That all makes people feel really humanized and respected and builds a relationship. You asked about me. Two stories. One thing I do is I send holiday cards to my team. Now, if the team got really big, I had to limit who I send them to, but it's about a couple thousand. And I write a personal note on every one. No personal note, no card. And that, I started in October, to be honest with you. I finally learned to write a note on a little card, slide it in the card. But I'll tell you another, Scott Kirby told me a great story of small acts. His wife was on an airplane. And the captain came out and said, "Oh, Mrs. Kirby, I'm so pleased you're on my flight. I really love United and I really love your husband as CEO." And she goes, "Oh, what do you mean? What happened?" Well, it was a black female captain. And she said, when George Floyd was murdered, the shooting, when he was killed, he called every person, every captain who's a person of color, and just checked in. He didn't tell us what to do. He didn't say, we have all these things for you. He just said, how are you doing? I want you to know I and we are here for you. So, that's a small act. On one hand, he didn't have to think very hard. He didn't have to make major decisions. Now he had to make a lot of phone calls, but what a power. And you can imagine how that spread through the company, whether for sure with the people of color, but probably even beyond. So, it doesn't have to be grand things like that. Congratulations. I'll tell you, one colleague of mine said, I love it, Joe, when if I tell my boss something on Thursday, like, oh, my son's got a big soccer game. If on Monday or Tuesday that boss says, oh, how was the soccer game? She says, I feel so great. That's not takes 2 seconds on either side. It's and they just feel wonderful. So there's a lot of these that I think really build a relationship between people of human.
Absolutely, and it exemplifies this spirit of generosity. And so, and I laud you for the concept of the thank you, or I'm scared.
Each of us have our own thing. That's mine. It's a little crazy.
Here's the point I'm saying, because you have a lot on your schedule, and so I think what you're making a point is that if it's important to you, you will make the time. Is that correct? So
yes, yeah, and it's whether it's something as big as that, or quite frankly, a lot of these things don't take a lot of time.
Now, BCG has something called the Bias-Free Leadership Inclusion Safety Support Index. So, your research found that employees who feel happiness and empowerment at work are better able to fulfill their potential, and even quantified it by 30%, a third better. So what's the key? How do you improve employee engagement? That's a mega consulting endeavor for not just BCG, but lots of firms, everybody. So what are some things that we can learn from that study, Joe?
So actually, I think you said that right. Like, what are some levers one can pull? Because it's a big thing. I mean, I could joke and say, well, if you execute the 7 traits of the generous leader, you're going to be on your way. But there are
yes, say that.
But I'll tell you, reading through the study carefully, there's a couple of things. The number one thing that drove people to feel more connected and better, and the benefit of this, when companies have higher bliss index, the retention or the attrition rate can drop as much as half from those that are on the bottom. And none of us can afford to lose people, at least not the people. So a couple of things. They said one of the top things is the behaviors of the senior leaders and of the leaders is very critical. How you role model, the messages you send, in particular on issues like diversity, or let me say inclusion. Mentoring was one of the things that drove a big difference. Having organizations that affinity groups or whatever that can make sure people know those exist are also pretty powerful. So any of these things, listening, inclusion, be an ally or a mentor, are powerful. But I was quite pleased that really it was all about the leaders' behavior was the top driver of that happiness.
So when we say leaders' behavior, would a simpler way of saying that being walk the talk? So
yes, walk the talk. Be a mentor and let people know it.
Yeah, that's
be inclusive and role model it.
Now, in coaching, one of the things we look for, and it's probably half the work we do in executive coaching, is dealing with blind spots. Organizations too have blind spots. So when it comes to a topic like engagement or the traits improved by the Bliss Index, how do we identify those blind spots?
Yes, that's hard, depending on where you sit in the organization. I guess I have 2 sets of answers. One that are more kind of traditional tools. I mean, if you have a people survey, get inside the people survey, but get inside it by departments or offices or groups of people with like backgrounds or groups of levels, not just, on average, everybody's happy. Okay, but what if this, and that's not that hard to do. Get behind it for managers. If you're at the top, how is this manager's team feeling? That's pretty powerful.
You mentioned something, jump in here, and I think this is your point. So when we do surveys and then we just throw out, How about, and I think this is what you're getting to, engage in the survey instead of do the report out and be specific and then take feedback. Does that work, Joe?
Yeah, yes, and but actually I'll go a step further. Make sure you dig into the survey and separate the different. You might say on average just 80% of people are going to stay here next year, but this group only 30% are staying. In this group it's 100. So if you're going to share that stuff openly, you've got to share it and share the, what I guess you call it the warts, because that reveals the blind spots.
Now, one of the themes is in your book, and you touched on it briefly momentarily, is the concept of allyship or allies. Now, you postulate there are different kinds of allies. How so?
Well, yeah, I think there's three kinds. One, people I call the button wearers who, wear the Pride Month, wear this, Black Lives Matter month button. That's nice. But if you don't do anything, how'd you put it? Walk the talk. If you don't do anything behind it, I think that's one. Then the performative ally is actually, and this one I think is formally defined, is someone who builds diverse teams and supportive because there's metrics they're trying to hit. Now, my friends say that's okay, it's better than nothing, but that's not what I argue is an action ally. And I have to say, I had to talk to a lot of people to understand this. It's, you can tell I'm a white male that may be a little bit advantaged, but that is someone who, all of my colleagues, the three key things. You open the door for somebody and let them walk through. So look for opportunities and great opportunities for them to walk through. Don't do it. Don't be there. Don't pick them up if they fall. And you coach, but open the door and let them walk through and let them fail or deliver as they do. It's very important. And then, of course, do be a coach. One of my friends said, give me your top 5%. And then other thing that's quite important, and I had too many colleagues that told me this doesn't always happen, is if things start getting tough for the person you're supporting, do not run away. And there was more stories of someone running away, quote unquote, than you or I wished you, if in the spirit of your podcast, Grace Under Pressure, kind of the opposite. So, those are open doors, let them walk through, be a top-notch coach, and be there when it gets tough. That is an active ally.
Great. I think this is linked into your active ally, and I like that concept. There's also a concept called sponsorship, and I've always defined that, or not I haven't, I've learned from my colleagues, but women colleagues who say it's when they talk about you inside the room. Not gossipy, but hey, this person can do the job, and talk about them and their skills. Do you find that truth in that, Joe?
Yeah, or yes, or even more powerfully, don't let them be diminished, as you say, by women. I had a very powerful story. One of my colleagues told me they were going to present, she and John, can you hear me? John?
Yes, I'm back. My apologies. My internet went down.
I couldn't. I thought it might be me. I came back twice and it was black. So, oh my gosh.
No, I got to be honest. I've done 260 shows. It's the first time I've lost internet. So shame on me. I apologize. So,
if you remember during COVID, we were all learning about this stuff. Things dropped. We were used to it. It's okay.
All right. Anyway, well, we have just a little bit more to go if you still have time. My apologies. And so, anyway, we were picking it up. So, vulnerability. What have you learned about it, Joe?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I do think it's quite important to be honest or authentic, because the more important thing I've learned is when you can share that honesty or authenticity or vulnerability, and it's got to draw their own line, you free and release others to feel that, to just move past their fears. And fears are a major roadblock, and that's what I've learned. And I saw that during leadership of COVID, other experience in my life, talking to friends that, when a leader admitted, hey, I don't know either. And the whole room, oh, you don't know? Oh, none of us know. And the energy just went up in the room and they got something done. Otherwise, they're all afraid to admit they didn't know.
No, I'm so glad you touched on that, because that is so important. And it really plays a role in mental health, too, when a leader can talk about the issues, whether it's in their family or self, or please come forward should you need it. And it frees people. It diminishes stigma. And as you said, for just asking for help or whatever it is. So very important. So
yes, really important.
Right. Now, if we are intrigued by the topic of your book, The Generous Leader, how do I start doing that, Joe? What's the first step? So,
Yeah, I guess, well, skim the book or read the very back of it. Yeah. No, but what I think you ought to do is there's 7 traits in there. I think just even pick a trait and start to work on it. Let me do more ask, and really listen and see what you know. Very simple. Or let me bring small acts, thank yous, congratulations, whatever, into my business. I think that's the one way to start is pick something and just start moving. If you're already good at some of these, but you're afraid of the vulnerability point, begin to step a little bit over a line. Don't jump all in.
I want to go back to that small acts thing. Have you discovered, it's a practice that you do, but have you noticed that perhaps once you started, like, well, I don't know if it's really me, but they get into it and then they say, hey, this really works, and then integrate it into their leadership style. Do you see that, Joe? So
yeah, I think it becomes 2 things. It has to become habit. I mean, it's integrated into your humanity, really, John. But then it becomes, linked in as a habit. I make a point of saying happy birthday, or I do that, or whenever something great happens, a note goes to everybody congratulating the people. And, the thing is, it's supposed to be a small act. You're not supposed to write, if you're given an email, don't write paragraphs, write 3 sentences. People don't read things anyways. I don't know why I just said that when I wrote a book, but it is what it is.
Well, no, you're right. We're pressed for time, but a handwritten note from my superior, my boss, that will resonate, and they'll share it with their spouse, their family, and hey, look what I got from the boss. So it does mean.
I was talking to Mom the other day. Go ahead. Sorry, John. Go ahead.
And the theme of my show is Grace Under Pressure, and I ask every guest a story about grace. And your whole book really is, especially The Generous Leader. Generosity is integral to grace. Is there a story you'd want to share with us, Joe?
Yeah. This one, I'm glad you gave me some sense because I could talk too long. No, I was thinking about it. I actually think I'm going to say something quite personal and then a little story with it. My wife she is a generous person. So I live amongst grace every day of my life. I am really privileged, John. But I will tell you, during COVID, it's the first time she ever saw me work because, I was in the other room and she listened to me and she'd hear me. And I'd be pushing people and short with them because I'm just always in a hurry. She came in one day and said, you have got to cool it, buddy. And she wrote a sticky note, slow down, be patient, be calm, do not snap. And I keep that sticky note. And that was a moment of grace, and it helped me to be more graceful when everybody was feeling some pressure. It's a small one, but that sticky note sits on my monitor to this day.
No, that's a true story. Oh, bless your wife, Sarah, I believe her name is.
That's
so, and that's a great story. And, I will say on Sarah's behalf, that's a small gesture and you've integrated it. And I like you turned it into a sticky note. So that's pretty special. So, Joe, your book, Generous Leader, is available wherever fine books are sold, and it's on Amazon everywhere, guess, right? So, okay.
Yep, it's there.
Great. So, and how can people find you? Through the BCG website? I have your
BCG website is easy, joedavis.com. Or I've now learned in this business to follow LinkedIn. My message, I read my messages now, John. So
great. All right.
Leave a message. I'll respond. I will respond.
Well, Joe, you have been a great guest and a generous guest to me because we lost an internet signal there. Joe didn't, I did, but we found it. So we're back. And Joe Davis, your book is The Generous Leader. It's a good read. It's something to open your mind and your heart. So I endorse it. So thanks very much. And with that, we will close out. So
thank you, John.